which could be adapted to a modern setting. So most of us are in a modern setting, I'm assuming, since you're on Zoom or listening on social media. And as a scholar friend of mine from Utah State University, who heads the department in philosophy, said if you have a philosophy that doesn't have an on-ramp, an access point, then it's a useless philosophy. It's dead. It's only mental speculation. You have to have a way to practice to come into resonance with your higher self. And you have to experience for yourself that you're making improvement. So one of the texts that the Golden Monk quoted from frequently was called the Bhagavad Gita. It's a universally appreciated text throughout Emerson, Gandhi, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Albert Einstein, the Beatles, especially George Harrison, but others, and Tupac Shakur. There's a spectrum of people who have read it, have appreciated it, and use it as a lens to see the world so they can navigate. The topic we've been discussing lately is one of the main topics of the Bhagavad Gita, which is the three modalities of the world. And those modalities are also called gunas or ropes. They tie us to a certain perspective or a certain way of acting. And the good news, waiting for the good news, is that we can improve ourselves by moving up the hierarchy of modalities. And ultimate improvement, or the ultimate improvement that the Golden Monk Chaitanya talked about, was rising above the modes altogether. Seemingly Herculean task, but by increments it can be done. And that's what the Bhagavad Gita, in the Bhagavad Gita, the teacher Krishna mentions that by gradually readjusting one's lifestyle and the way one practices, or I should say, by adopting a spiritual practice, one should be able to feel one's ascent from lower modes to higher modes and then above the modes of material nature. I like to compare it to an airplane taking off from a runway, has to get momentum. And as it's going faster, faster, then flip the wings in a certain way and the plane takes off and you're airborne. So that's one of the verses in the Bhagavad Gita, that if one practices bhakti yoga consistently, it doesn't have to change your lifestyle drastically, but if you implement the basic principles of bhakti yoga, especially hearing, chanting, remembering, these are practices of kinds of meditation and listening to the original, what are called shastras, or high-minded literatures, which have been passed down over many years, and also doing non-reward seeking work or service, as we call it sometimes. These are some of the tenets. And we can notice by implementing these in one's life, one can gradually rise above the modes of nature. And to start the discussion today, I bring up a point that I found profound the first time that I heard it, was a question: is there a cause for all suffering? Is there a formula we can find then to overcome suffering? And this is a question that one of the students of Chaitanya brought up, who happened to be the student, a scholar himself, also was highly positioned in the government, but had had enough of it because he felt that no matter how he was positioned in the world, he still experienced what Chaitanya, or the Golden Monk, described as the threefold miseries of life. Would you like to talk about misery today a little bit? Are you open to it? Okay, you're smiling, so I'm saying it's a happy topic to talk about suffering and misery. Somehow it can make us happy because we're all in the same boat. Some, there are threefold miseries, and I think you'll be able to relate to them too. We'll even have a quiz game in a little while, and you get to participate and fill in the blanks when I give you certain letters. Is everyone up for that kind of thing today? Marulia? Marulia is up for it. She's always up for it. Okay, so let's go to the first slide, not the first slide in the deck, but yeah, number one, because I'd like to see the and think about the metaphor for today's topic. I really like this topic, the forgotten flame. So this metaphor can be interpreted in various ways. Let me tell you how. So, first of all, consciousness is flame-like because it's like fire. It illuminates. For instance, I'm looking at Manish Mukaravinda right now in his window, and I can tell that he's alive. What is the part that's alive? It's the consciousness within. If the consciousness were not within, there'd be no light. There'd be no flame. So in some ways, sometimes, in some ways, we give names to the consciousness as a unit of consciousness, like Ātmā means a spark of consciousness. It's eternal. It's non-reducible. It's always there. It's always existed. Always will exist. And it's flame-like in that it illuminates. For instance, right now we're sitting here, and all our bodies are illuminated by that flame. You can feel your feet, you can feel your hands, and that's because you're conscious. Consciousness is like a flame, but we forget about it. And one of the ways we forget about it is we come into what's called the bodily concept of life. And I start thinking, I am my body. So the forgotten flame is we've forgotten who we are, part of that. And then under the pull of nature's modes lies your purest self waiting to be remembered. And this is a simple explanation of what spiritual practice is. It's an awakening to what we already are. You don't have to become something else. You don't have to change who you are. You just have to remember who you actually are. And it's in diverting our attention to a false sense of self. We call ahankar means a false ego. There is a real ego. That's the real thing, who we are. But the false ego means I misidentify myself with the body. And when I do that, I suffer. And what's that suffering feel like? It feels kind of like a forest fire, like being in the middle of a forest fire. Things are burning. So that's the other forgotten flame. We forget we're in the middle of a forest fire. And if you are planning a picnic, let's say, in the middle of the forest fire, it's going to be interrupted one way or the other. So there's an ancient text written by a, a really powerful sage scholar, saintly commentator on the ancient Vedas named Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. And he wrote this song in Sanskrit that starts Samsaradhavanada Lidaloka Tranaya Karunya Ghanaganatam Praptasya Kalyana Gunarnavasya Govin Vande Guroshi Charanadavindam. And in this first stanza of his poem, he says, this is from Sanskrit, that actually the world is burning. Our bodies are burning. They're 100 and no, they're 98.6. That's hot. And they eventually burn out. And the world is sort of like a forest fire. Whatever we are used to now, whatever paradigm we think is our paradigm, somehow or other it will be burned. So he says, we're in this forest fire. We can't soothe that burning sensation from the massive fire that we're in the middle of with a few buckets of water. You need a rainstorm. You need a heavy rainstorm, and that would quell the intense heat and the flames of destruction. So this is one of the ideas of spiritual practice also, that we invoke a rainstorm of what's called karunya, a kind of soothing of this burning sensation from the material world. And it's altogether possible because we're not actually burning. We're burning because of our false identification with the world. So, having given all that heady philosophy. Let's go to slide number 2 and the question, what is the root cause of all suffering? And is there a root cause? It would be nice to know, wouldn't it? Because perhaps if you could discover a root cause, then maybe you could do something about it, right? Okay, yes. And you may have had the experience of having some ailment. If anybody here ever had an ailment, and if you go to someone who's trained to help you overcome ailments and they don't know what it is, that's frustrating, isn't it? You go to 3 health practitioners and they say, we can understand your suffering, but maybe it's in your mind. We can't find anything. There's nothing wrong with you. So that's frustrating. So in this life, we may also feel awkward or out of place, or we may be suffering. Is this one of the tests, the mind? Okay, 20 points. It wasn't on the test, but you got it preemptively. Thank you. From the chat box, Ela. So this is a question you'll see in the next slide, asked by one of the students of the Golden Monk. He took on a few students who he found to be sincere and highly qualified to help expand the knowledge base that he was teaching, because after all, he didn't carry anything with him, just a simple water pot. He held a staff. So he accepted those who were sincerely eager to codify his teachings, which he was taking from ancient scripts. He wasn't making it up. And they put together many books. And one of his students was named Sanatan. And his last title, the title in his name, Goswami, which means someone who's controlled the senses. It's a very high title in those circles. And the first question he asked to the Golden Monk when he met him for under the circumstances of being a student, he said, Ke ami kene amai jare tapatrai iha nahi jani ke mani hitahai. That's Bengali. If there's any Bengalis on the call today, please forgive my pronunciation. So the first thing he says is Keami, who am I? That's an interesting question to ask, because if you interview anybody, just stand outside a baseball game with a clipboard and say, who are you? You'll get perhaps a few people that don't want to answer. In fact, I predict that. And then there are other people, they'll give you some answer about how I'm a man, I'm a woman, I'm an American, I'm an Indian. These are all, according to Bhagavad Gita, superficial answers, because we're something beyond the body. So he asked this question, Kayami, and then Kene why amai jare tapatrai. Why am I being burned in this world by 3 types of miseries? And I'll go into the 3, and that's where you can score big points, Silo, because that's where the quiz comes. Iha, this means in this world, nahi jani, I do not know. Ke ami hita hai, I do not know what to do for my ultimate welfare. So why am I suffering? Who am I? And what should I do to attain the highest benefit in life? If you go on YouTube and just start nosing around, you'll find everybody has some suggestion about what to do, how how to get rid of belly fat, how to be more focused. There are millions of them, literally millions of suggestive presentations by people, TED Talks, and lots of self-appointed self-help people. And all of them seem to me to be, most of them, sincere, and they have good ideas. But what if we went to a solution that would catch everything that we're looking for at the root? And really, that's the question Sanatan's asking. Where's the root cause of all these things? And how can I align myself properly by knowing who I am? So now a quick review of what we talked about last week. If you weren't here, you'll see it for the first time, perhaps. But in the next slide, number 4, we go into the very simple definition of the modes of material nature. Now, the modalities are 3 in number. They're called tamas, rajas, sattva. Though that's in ascending order. Tamas means darkness, rajas means intense activity, and sattva means light or goodness. And then we'll learn today that the Golden Monk taught about how there's something beyond even goodness, beyond all the 3 modes of material nature. And why is this important? Because the combinations and permutations of these modes define how we think and how we interact with the world. And when our consciousness is affected by these 3 modalities or the combinations or permutations of them, then we see the world in a particular way and we react to it in a particular way. So as an example, in ignorance or tamas, darkness, we feel helpless. Helpless means that we don't see any way out. People can experience various degrees of this helplessness through forms of depression or not being able to help themselves at all, physically, mentally, spiritually. They just feel lost. That's darkness. And then above that, represented in the next slide, number 5, is passion. Of course, there are many different symptoms to this. I'm just simplifying it for the sake of review. But activity, not bad in and of itself. We have to be active, right? Also, sometimes we have to be still in darkness. We have to sleep at night just to maintain our bodies. So we experience cycles of these various modes throughout a 24-hour period. Perhaps at night when you're sleeping, you're more influenced by tamas or ignorance. In passion, during the day when the sun comes up, even the birds, they get up before the sun. They notice it's coming up and they get active. They start moving around. Everyone's making a living. 101 freeway here near where I live. Everyone's driving. Got to get there, got to get there, got to get there. I owe. It's off to work I go. So passion, activity. But specifically, rajas also is a kind of activity where too much is not enough. No matter what I get, I arrive at what I thought was going to be a satisfactory destination. I would be more than I was before, but still there's another higher rung to climb, and I'm not satisfied until I climb that. That's a sense of rajas, that wherever I am now, I have to become something more in order to feel satisfied. I have to get something more. For instance, if you've ever looked at your wardrobe and then you thought, not enough, I need something new, then you know what that prick of rajas feels like. Like, no, 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 that's not good enough. That's out of style. I suppose that's why some people who don't want to get caught in that, especially with the wardrobe, they just wear the same thing every day. I know monks do that. I lived as a monk for 13 years and I just wore this same style every day. It didn't matter what time of year or where I was. I'd always wear the same thing. Others, like, I know Steve Jobs did something like that, just like, okay, that's check it off my list. I'm not going to get into the clothing thing. And Shukadev Goswami, going back 5,000 years, he's counted as one of the great teachers and saints he didn't wear any clothes at all because he just said, I'm not going to get into that. So passion, it's all around us. And then in the next slide, we see goodness, can even relate to the scenery there, that oftentimes in the forest, we find a sense of serenity because mode of goodness pervades the forest. Mode of passion, the more city-like activity, migigaka, as they say in Japanese. And then ignorance is perhaps places where there's ignorant things going on, even within the city, that are depraved or violent and so forth. Of course, they can be different. They can be mixtures with various elements of goodness, passion, and ignorance. It's not they're not absolute. They always mix together to one degree or another, but there's a predominance of one mode or another generally in people's lives, in their minds, in their bodies, and at different times of the day or year or their lifetimes. So in goodness, uh, there's a sense of happiness, and I had to put that parenthetical statement until you're not. And why did I put that in there? It's because in goodness, you're happy until the other modes surge in. It's inevitable. When you're in the modes of nature, you have to expect that any of them will become predominant. Even if you're happy temporarily, you're feeling serene, something will come along and will interrupt that. There'll be an upsurge of passion or ignorance at a particular time that will interrupt goodness. And therefore, that goodness is ephemeral. It's there for a while, but then it will be disturbed. So as long as one's within the modalities, then one can expect some kind of disturbance. However, I like to say a word for the mode of goodness. It's important. It's not that because the mode of goodness can be invaded by the other lower modalities that we shouldn't endeavor for it. In fact, the wisdom literatures and the Golden Monk himself talked about the importance of cultivating sattva. And many of us probably have experienced at one time or another, correct me if I'm wrong, feeling a little overwhelmed by the pace of life. That's possible because we move pretty fast. And what if you took a vacation or even a day off and you went to the forest? In Japan, they call it forest bathing. You walk through the trees. There's a few places around the Bay Area I go to, like Muir Woods. You go to Redwoods, get off the beaten path and go up the hill a little bit and just be there. You can see the sun coming down on the stream that comes from the mountain. You can see the trees that have been there for thousands of years and so forth. And you settle into a sense of serenity and clarity. A lot of the problems that were plaguing, they tend to slough off in that sense of, in that modality of goodness. So it's recommended that one try to adjust one's environment, both internally and externally. By externally, I mean, and I talked about this last week, keeping clean, have a place for everything and everything in its place. That can sound slightly in the mode of passion, but still being organized and clean and not collecting too much. And also the food we eat, it has an effect on our consciousness. Some food is tamasic, the mode of ignorance. Some food is rajasic, which means the mode of passion. Some food is in the mode of goodness. And so what we eat will may have a big difference, will make a big difference in our consciousness. And so these are different considerations. Now, that's just going back to the idea of the three modalities. It's a constant philosophical point made throughout all the ancient wisdom literatures, from Patanjali to Kapiladev, to the ancient Vedas, to the Bhagavad Gita, to Krishna's teachings, and so forth. And as I mentioned, the Golden Monk, as we'll see in slide number 7, the next one, he talked about coming back to our pure consciousness. What does that mean? Above the modes of nature. So there is a refuge above the modes of material nature where we feel naturally blissful. And from that stage, we can see the cloud-like coverings of the modes of material nature. And we can see also ourself, that we're not the material body. We can also see our source. So all of those revelations puts us in what's called a state of yoga or union with the Supreme. And so that's an important point. Now, if I can, I hope it's not a digression, but it can be fun to talk about the threefold miseries, because isn't that one of the questions that Sanatan asked to the Golden Monk? He said, why do I suffer the threefold miseries? he talked about threefold miseries. So what do we mean by threefold miseries? I thought misery was just misery, one category. Well, according to Sanatana and the answers given by the Golden Monk, we'll find out there's several, meaning three. So the threefold miseries, what are they? We see on the left-hand side, it's called bodily and mental miseries. In the middle, miseries from others and miseries from nature. Let's see you, if anything comes to mind when it comes to bodily. No, let's save that one. I'm saving it for later. Do we have that slide with the A, B, C, D? No. Okay. Oh, we do. It's in the next one, so don't go there yet. But let's see. No, no, let's do go there. We'll start on the bodily miseries. And this is where you can score big points. Get your fingers on keyboard because you have to answer some of these questions in order to score. Okay, what are the threefold miseries bodily wise? That was a horrible sentence. I'm going to start over. What are some of the miseries that arise from the body? And here we have before you the alphabet of diseases. Oh, some of them are given away there, so don't look at the screen, just listen to my voice. Any miseries that come to the body that start with A. Let's say diseases. What diseases can you list in the chat box for 10 points each? Aging of the body, asthma, Sheila scored, Manish scored, Vicky scored, Alzheimer's, acne, alcoholism. We could be here all day with the A's. ADHD, midday sleep attack. I don't see how that's an A, my young, but anyway. Autism. Yeah, I mean, it boggles the mind if you get out a medical dictionary also and you start looking at diseases. You're like, what's this one? What's that one? Those are the only ones we can catalog. There's a lot that can go wrong with the body. How about B? Let's go just a short round of Bs. By the way, you get 10 points, everybody, by Bob Scott scoring. Maria, addictions, BP, breathing issue, bronchitis, bipolar, I don't know, just hearing all of them, it makes me feel better about my life. Boils, broken bone. Hey, I hate to laugh. I shouldn't laugh. These things are serious. Okay, that's enough. We can't take any more. Bacterial infection. You can see how easy to just run. We're used to these things. These are miseries that come to the body, and they see keep going. Bulimia, brain tumor, blurred vision. If we go through the whole alphabet, really, it will be no problem for us to come up with a catalog of various ailments that come to the body. So this is an existential truth, according to the Golden Monk and the Bhagavad Gita, that as long as we identify with the body as self, we're going to suffer. And you can just extend that to your car. As long as you think you are your car, you're going to suffer. Especially if somebody hits it or scratches it or it doesn't start, and you think, oh, my car, my car, my car. And we also think, oh, my body, my body, my body. So these are the bodily sufferings, the sufferings that come from the bodily level. And we see in number 10, miseries from other living entities. Now, what kind of,
One,
huh?
um, I just want to call out James mentioned OCD and ADD. Everything has to be perfect, but not for very long.
Hmm. Ha ha ha. That's a pretty funny combination, James. Thanks for mentioning that. Yeah, I mean, it's not funny, but I mean, curious. And there can be combinations and permutations of ailments and so forth. Very true and very helpful that you mentioned that. And what if we start talking about any kind of miseries you experience from other living beings? Let's say living being. We're not just talking about humans. You could talk about any other living being that causes you some kind of consternation, suffering. Ready? Chat box, go for it. Sadness. No, I'm talking about people who affect you when people should on you. Yeah. Thanks, Sheila. So you should have done this, you should have done that. Viruses, yeah. Rats in your house? Definitely. Using you should. Children, parents, IRS. Thank you, Vicky. That puts a chill up everyone's spine. Social media creators can cause us some consternation. Office workers, ants in the food items. There are worse entities besides that, probably. Other people taking their misery out on you. Narcissists, those who are sociopaths or psychopaths. 6% of the population, according to Psychology Today, are either narcissistic, sociopathic, or they're psychopaths. And they're all different definitions. Government, that's possible. Good government and the discussion of various topics about governments changing, coming, going. All these things, they have to do with other living beings. If you're having a picnic in the park and a bear comes, that could be a cause of consternation, trouble. Economy or economists or mean neighbors or yeah, I mean it's delicious, isn't it? Talking about all the miseries. I don't know why, but it makes us feel better. It makes me feel better. Okay, go to the next one. That's number 11 in the threefold. Hate to leave behind the people who annoy us, but let's look about nature. So then he said this is the third misery category of miseries. Global warming. Sheila's already on it. Global warming, fires, earthquake. They just come out of nowhere. I mean, they don't come out of nowhere. They come for a reason, but we're sitting there thinking everything's fine. Next thing, everything's literally shaken up. Hurricane, tornadoes, volcanoes, too hot, too cold. Those are constant. They're always changing. Tsunami. Yeah, scary. Nature, any natural disaster, polluted air, lightning. So these three, I know it's hard to stop. These three are a constant, or as in their combinations and permutations. The Golden Monk pointed out that to Sanatan when he asked this question, he said, they're always there. There's never a time when there's not one of those miseries affecting us in some way or another, he pointed out.
Uh,
Yes?
Claudia had a comment. He says, "That's just nature being nature. We are in the middle of nature."
We sure are, and that's the whole point. We're in the middle of it. I had this similar thought in that Loma Prieta earthquake. I happened to be around here in the Bay Area when it happened, and a few bridges fell down or collapsed, and there was some minor damage, and for some people major. And I was thinking after Claudia that if we didn't have rigid structures, there probably wouldn't have been much to report. When we live on top of a zone that's shaking and it can change at any time. And that's part of our plight, is we're in the middle of it all. And this is to create a kind of awareness, the Golden Monk, that this is not our permanent residence. Because we notice all these threefold miseries, and if we become acutely aware of them, we'll notice that we're in an unstable environment. Just as Claudia is pointing out, we're in the middle of something that's always changing, and we can be affected by it. We also try to avoid it. For instance, what is modern life? Everyone lives like kings or queens because you think about how, generally have air conditioning, indoor plumbing, everything to avoid being affected by the elements, and so forth is there in our lives. Nonetheless, threefold miseries persist. So a little more philosophy and then something practical. The next slide talks about what the Golden Monk describes as illusion, the third potency. So we have the internal or spiritual potency, that's reality, and then we have the illusory potency, which is the ever-changing world, and it's called the world of illusion because it's non-permanent. And it is incompatible with our nature because we're permanent. And then he brings us in his teachings to the next concept in describing how we can have either a bodily conception of life or a spiritual identity. In the bodily conception, we identify solely as this body. So if you look at any aspect of your body, you'll notice you say my hand, you don't say I hand. You say my hair, you don't say I hair. Although we do identify with the body, if we objectify and see that I'm in a body, but I'm not my body. Nor are we our minds, the Golden Monk pointed out. The mind is a subtle energy, but we can be aware of it. And therefore, since we can objectify it, since we can be aloof from it, we're separate from it because we're the observer of it. So when Sanatan said, "Who am I?" the Golden Monk said, "You're a pure living entity. You're the consciousness. You're a person." That's what consciousness means, personality. It's not amorphous. It's not some just vague energy, but we actually have personal energy. It's just when that gets misdirected into the bodily conception of life, he said, then we suffer. So what's the antidote? Golden Monk talks in the next slide about, he tells Sanatan that we are the same in quality as our source. Now this is a metaphor, the sun coming up. It's a metaphor. It's commonly used for many different things. And like a lot of metaphors, they don't perfectly match. This one's just to indicate that our nature is fire-like. That's going back to the title of the show, The Forgotten Flame. We're like the flame that's illuminating this body by consciousness. That's us. And our source is like that also. Source is just like fire. And as the Golden Monk pointed out, our original source, although in one place, expands his energies everywhere, all pervading. In fact, everything comes from one source. Everything's the energy that came from one source. It's the philosophy of the Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam. And we're part of that. We're part of the whole. And the part of us that's most like our source is our consciousness, the flame-like existence, not the body. The body's superfluous. This is one of the main points. So some artwork that was passed on to me for this program comes in the next slide, number 15. Is when we forget our source, we suffer. So you used to have on one side somebody who's blocked him or herself from the sun, and the other person who's in the sunlight. I'm not talking about the sun per se, but metaphorically speaking, when we, through the process of bhakti yoga, become reconnected, our consciousness becomes reconnected with our conscious source, important choice of words, then we reawaken to our natural state of happiness. When we forget our source, we block out the light, then we're in the modalities of the material world and we suffer in various ways, inevitably. So as we see in the next slide, when we remember our source, we end our suffering. This is the process of awakening to who we really are. And finally, in the last slide, number 17, yoga means remembering our source. So there's various ways to do that mentioned in the ancient wisdom literatures that are not far-fetched. They're commonsensical. They are activities that we're already engaging in regularly. It's just adjusting them to be conscious that we come from an original conscious divine source and that we're part of that. And those are the elements of the practice of bhakti. And that's the philosophy behind it. So what I wanted to instill in myself and anybody who has so kindly joined this short discussion today is a sense of how close at hand is our emancipation from suffering, for lack of a better phrase, and our awareness of ourself. It's very close at hand. It's just that I'm distracted. The biggest attraction for us is our original source. In fact, the original source is all attractive, has everything that we want to be happy. And we can be happy unto ourselves. We don't need anything extra. We don't have to add on anything extra. And if we reconnect with our consciousness, first of all, and then realize our conscious source, then we naturally feel happy. This is called Ātmā or self-satisfaction. And wouldn't that be nice? Above any of the effects of the three modalities, a person feels naturally happy. So those are a few philosophical points that the Golden Monk made over 500 years ago based on very ancient writings. The Vedas go back thousands of years. Historians count the Rig Veda as the oldest book on the planet. It was written in Sanskrit, which, by the way, is practically mathematically perfect language as far as grammar, syntax, phonology goes. You can't find a more refined language. In fact, that's what the word means, Sanskrit. It's highly refined. And it comes from a culture in which people were preoccupied with discovering aesthetics and discovering their own sentience and discovering their source. It's the culture of self-realization, comes from a culture that is steeped in this, and the literatures that come out of it have been passed down over millennia from those who have practiced them intensely, have preserved the writings and have passed them down, and in many cases summarized them, as did the Golden Monk, gave very practical ways that one could employ these in one's life. He advocated for a system called devotional service. Sometimes we call it the yoga of the heart or the yoga of gratitude, because there's a way in which of connecting to our original conscious source through gratitude, through love. Actually, the Golden Monk said that's the highest level. It's called prema, love for our source. Means that you have love very quite naturally for all things that have emanated from the source. And that's a rare mentality to achieve. That was the longest diatribe I've ever presented on this show. I was going for a filibuster record or a Guinness Book of Records for our program today, and I think I achieved it. The last longest one was 46 minutes. So I hit it 47. And now I leave it to you to comment or ask questions and say, what about this? What did you think of that? Thanks, Wolf. Good to see you, by the way. And what have you to say? Comments, questions? You want your money back from the show today?
I have something to share. This is
Yes,
Sheila.
please, please.
Yeah, I like the reminders about the body. And I also kind of intertwine that with the people around us because as a female, and actually probably it goes to for males, the things that we see in social media, the advertisements, people are telling us how we should look. And I have personally struggled with body image issues, and I know my son has as well. And that causes us a lot of suffering. And so I do it to myself. I understand that, but we also get it from ads and social media. So I really appreciate just the reminders that I'm causing myself suffering and I can see it now. So just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Yeah, it's really important what you said. I resonate with that. And there's a way in which we may have a glimpse of what the problem is, but it may still be hard to come out of it. Like a lot of people are addicted to looking at their phones. They can't stop. and they may come across when they're scrolling something that says, don't look at your phone. They put it down, and then 5 minutes later they pick it up again. And so, you know, we don't mean to take these things lightly or say that, just by watching this slideshow today, all your problems are solved. An analogy is sometimes, prisoners in the clink in the jail, and then he or she can look out through the bars and see the sun and freedom outside, but it doesn't mean you're going to get out. There has to be a sustained practice in order to rise above these things. Even in self-help, there's descriptions of how you have to get consistent, get into process, and step at a time. In recovery, same thing. There's steps one has to take diligently, be honest with oneself, and really apply. You got to work the system. So, in self-realization, it's no joke. It really means you want to go from, being D minus up to being a B plus and an A. And how do you do that? You really got to get your thing together. So all this philosophy is really to give us a framework and be inspired. And I just comment on your point, the specific point about sense bodily image and so forth. I saw a documentary about Sigmund Freud's nephew. He was the founder of modern day public relations and advertising. It's a fascinating look into the psychological manipulation of the public in order to induce them to buy stuff. I mean, I don't want to get into some heavy conspiracy type of theory, but I just want to say that there are ways in which, if we expose ourselves to propaganda in the world, then we can become caught up in it, and all of those have to do with the three modes of material nature, all of those entanglements. And the Golden Monk's pointing out, go to the root. Don't try to solve it piecemeal, but try to rise above the three modes of material nature. And when you do that, you realize the bodily conception of life, in which I'm trying to keep up with every little thing. And it doesn't mean to live like a vagabond or a refugee, but it does mean to have a sense of purpose, and also that I'm not my body. Thank you very much. That almost triggered another extra long. Yes, James, please go ahead.
I'm not sure. It's kind of on topic. It started with the not the body. I've been doing some meditations lately in the morning, where I'm trying to really focus on the higher self and the connection, because I feel like I've got a 6-year-old and an 8-year-old. I'm a single parent, and I'm like just constantly going with work, and I'm just constantly on the go, right? And I realized I was doing some work for a client outside of Intel, and I could hear like the voice in my head, which is like that warning saying, "Oh, don't do that part." And I did it anyway, and it set me back like a couple of hours on the job, right? And I realized that it was like either my instinct or my intuition, or maybe even that higher self kind of like saying, "I'm trying to help you here, but you're not listening." And I'm trying to catch myself in those moments, and like if I want to yell at the kids, and realize like, oh wait, that's my reptilian brain part trying to let just taking over, and listen to the other part of the brain, or the higher self part, and try to bring that more in control of it. And I don't know that I'm not sure you'll follow me, but I'm looking for any kind of guidance you might have for that.
Yeah, such an important point. I definitely could understand what you're saying. There are ways in which we have intuition, we know what we should do, we may not be able to do it. One of the recommendations given by the Golden Monk is that you be very deliberate about your life. To be deliberate, you have to deliberate. Deliberate and deliberate are written the same way. And they both have in the word Libra. Libra means the scales, you weigh things out. So before you do things, take a really close look at your life and see, who am I really? That's what Sanatan was doing. Who am I? What's the purpose of my life? And then write down, what your purpose is and follow a program that you trust. And when you do that, this is called Vaidhi. Vaidhi means you have some clear guidance in your life from a superior source. You first vet it, doubt it until you come to a point of it's like, okay, I can accept this guidance. And then once you have that, form a program in your life. This would be called, in the practice of Bhakti Yoga, Vaidhi Bhakti. You're not quite there yet. It's not like you're doing it spontaneously, but you do trust the source. And you've come to that point intellectually. Like I've studied it enough to understand that there's something extremely wise beyond my capacity of wisdom, and then I can follow it. And then you get a structure to your life, and then you get a template for making decisions. So when decisions come up and you say, is this just a whimsical thought? Is it intuition? Then you have something to judge it by. In fact, there's a threefold way of making decisions in the bhakti practice called guru, sadhu, and shastra. Shastra means the ancient wisdom literatures, and interestingly, it comes from a Sanskrit word shash, which can either mean shastra or shastra. You can pronounce it with the long or short A. Shastra means that punishment by sword, and shastra means that you take wisdom so you avoid the punishment by the sword. And then the other is guru. Guru means heavy. Find somebody or some person, some mentors that you feel are really grounded, that you can take help from. And sadhu means notice people who have made progress. So sadhus are those who are engaged in the practice more than me, that you can take their example. And so you triangulate, and if you have to ask questions, it's good to have a support system. Just like in health, if you want to have good health, you got to have a health team, people that take care of different parts of your bodily existence that you go to get advice, because this body is extremely delicate. I mean, actually, in some ways, it's very robust, but there's a way that you have to take guidance. So get aligned with Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, and then when you make decisions, you have something to go by and not just guessing, is this my intuition or something else?
Yeah, I think I run on instinct so much that my instincts are usually really good technically, right? Because I have a technical role and I have really good instincts with technology. Um, yeah, it's that it was almost as if there was a higher self or another like guiding force that I was ignoring, and I was like, wow, if I would have heeded it, I would have done better. And so trying to attune to that guidance is kind of where I was going. Yeah, thank
That's
you.
that's really what's advocated for in the Bhagavad Gita. It's called Buddhi Yoga. Buddhi means the intelligence, and get your intelligence lined up with that higher self. That's a whole topic, but very well put, James. I think we can all appreciate what you're saying. I know I do. Well, there's 2 more minutes. I think there was something on the board we left behind.
Yes. Sheila says, I have a practice of daily affirmations, and one of the things I say to myself is, I'm beautiful inside and out. I have other affirmations that I say to help myself not want to control outcomes.
That can be very helpful. And that's a sort of deliberation, because you decide ahead of time what you want, and then you write it down, and you keep coming back to that and say, okay, there's so many ways my mind wants to go, but here's what we've already decided on. It's kind of like when you sign a document sometimes to bequeath money to somebody in that context, and then you sign something that says, I such and such in a in my right state of mind, I'm signing this. So when we are in a right state of mind and we have that sense that I want to improve myself, get it down, write it down in an affirmation, so that you can remind yourself, no, this is what you want. This is what you want. Because it's so easy to slide off and forget and stay on track. Manish, for the last word.
Um, I was just thinking, like in engineering, we had this like whenever some issue comes, we try to find the root cause, RCA or RCA, root cause analysis and action. So similarly, I think this is the one of the things that we all this suffering, but we never come to that what is root cause. Maybe beginning engineer, he just trying to patch, like if any problem comes engineering, he was just trying to patch the solution. But again and again, the same problem comes, then the senior engineer says, no, you find the root cause of that problem rather than just patching up. So what you said is such a important thing, that we have to find the root cause of this suffering rather than patching through the different things that we do.
Okay, Manish just hit it out of the park. Boom, over the wall. Thanks, everybody. It's been a pleasure, even though I did most of the talking. I'm sorry for that. All the contributions you made to were heartfelt and for me and very relevant and powerful. I'm taking them all with me, and I'll never forget this day. Thanks for joining. It means a lot to me. And before we go, there's a way of opening the heart and just giving your goodwill to everybody who is together today. There's an ancient system. Our friends in the Himalayas come out of their caves every once in a while from their deep meditation. They put their hands high in the air and they say Hari Bol, which means keep the vibration going. Want to try it? I'm going to do it. Hari Bol.
Haribol!
Oh,
Great work.
Haribol!
Thank you.
Be a kind friend to everybody. Thank you.